From the campus of the University of Nebraska at Omaha, Consider This with Kathy Wyatt, a program of issues and information behind today's news.
Hi everyone, I'm Kathy Wyatt. Welcome to the 27th season and this week's edition of Consider This. Our topic, volunteer firefighters. Joining us to talk more about it is Jason McClunn. Jason is the Chief Deputy State Fire Marshal for Nebraska. He also serves as the Fire Chief in Louisville. Thank you so much for being here. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me.
I want to begin by having you describe the men and women we saw in that opening video.
Well, I guess my first word that comes to mind would be dedication. Actually, those are pictures from my station and my men and women, and they are probably some of the most dedicated folks I've ever worked with. When the pager goes off, they leave church, work, the kids' birthday parties, holidays in the middle of the night, you name it, and they're there. So, I mean, it's, like I said, they're probably some of the most dedicated folks I know.
We're going to get back to them in just a few minutes, but I want to start a little high level with this topic. Tell us about the U.S. Fire Administration.
Basically, the U.S. Fire Administration is a branch off the government, kind of operated, run by FEMA. Kind of what their role is to help give all kinds of things, whether it's guidance, training, grant funding, a lot of mixed bag of things to emergency services and the fire service.
Okay, you type in Nebraska, it takes you to the State Fire Marshal. Talk to us about the agency and specifically your role with it.
Well, I'm the Chief Deputy over District A Code Enforcement Division. The Code Enforcement Division, there's District A and District B, so there's a District B Chief. Obviously, we have a State Fire Marshal who is our agency director and an Assistant Fire Marshal. And then the district chiefs like me, we have several of them that do different things in our office. We have a plans division, we have a training division, flammable liquids pipeline, investigations, and then again, the code enforcement that there's two of us. So we have our hands in a lot of things. I don't know if people really know all the assets of the office that we have.
Wow, and not just that, but you're also the fire chief in one of 449
Correct.
Volunteer fire departments here in the state of Nebraska.
Yes.
So when we talk about that number, tell us the story behind that.
Well, I think it's, I don't know if people really realize how many volunteers that really is. You see posters once in a while and it's a picture of a fire truck and one fireman standing there and it says, what if volunteers didn't volunteer? I think, people really need to consider that, because if they really look at their small community, that's probably who is responding to their emergency, is those men and women that are dropping everything in the middle of the night, you name it, to go on those calls and help them in their time of need. And, it's very satisfying as a volunteer, because you know that when they've called us, they're having the worst day of their life or one of the worst days of their life, and we're doing everything we can to make it better.
Okay, we're going to drill down a little bit and bring it home specifically to you and Louisville. Before we talk about your work there, for people who've not been to Louisville, tell us about the city as we put up a map.
Okay, well, we are in northwestern Cass County. We're probably about 20 miles south of Omaha, right next to the Platte River. Our major highway is Highway 50 that runs right through the edge of town there. We've got Burlington Northern runs a main line right through the middle of town. So we've got quite a few state parks. We have Platte River State Park, the Louisville State Recreation Area, Camp Kataki. So, we've got a lot of neat things right in our area.
And you have a fire station.
We do.
Right. We have a couple of photos and we'll put those up as we're talking. But You did a nice job of kind of that big picture 449, but drilling down now as we look at these photos, tell us what this really does involve.
Well, I think, we're a town of about 1,200 people. Our station right now, we have about 28 volunteers, men and women. We do have a cadet program that we operate in conjunction with school-age kids. Their ages 16 to 18, and the school actually works with us. They have to meet certain criteria, of course, but even those kids are allowed to leave school for an emergency call. So and a lot of it is those kids that are interested in becoming either firefighters or even something like police officers, nurses, doctors, that type of work.
Okay, what's your story? Why did you get, or how did you get involved in this?
Well, I grew up at the fire station, really. My grandfather joined in October of 1963. He became the fire chief in 1965 and was the fire chief until 1990. After that, my dad joined in 1979, and I was born in 1980. My mom joined the Ladies Auxiliary when my dad joined. And my grandmother was actually one of the founding members of the Women's Auxiliary, along with several other of the women, wives of the guys that were on. So I've kind of just been around it all my life, and so someone in my family's been there since 1963, so I figured I might as well continue it.
What is it about what you do that, for your family, but for you personally and professionally, that drew you in and keeps you there, right? Engages you and makes you want to continue?
I think it's, in this line of work, things are continuously changing. The training gets more intense. There's newer technology out there, and it's that challenge to do that. And like I said before, I think some of it is the people that you see at the gas station or in the grocery store, at the post office picking up their mail, you see them on Sunday morning at church, those are the people we're going to help. And it's, I saw so-and-so in church 2 weeks ago, and now, unfortunately, their barn was on fire. And it's almost that personal pride that you're helping somebody that you know in their worst time.
Okay. You do a lot of the whole generating awareness thing, but really very important now because you have a shortage, right, of volunteer firefighters. Talk to us about that shortage and what that means for Louisville, but also for the state of Nebraska in general.
Well, unfortunately, as a volunteer department, the less members you have, the less chance there is that someone is around when there is a call. It takes longer to get equipment out the door to get to the scene of the emergency or to that person who's hurt or injured. And I think it's a trend that we're seeing is there just aren't as many volunteers. And I honestly think it's not that people don't want to volunteer, it's just lifestyles are different now. Even when I first got on the department, kids weren't in all these select baseball and basketball and football teams all over. And, I have a daughter that's in dance 2 or 3 nights a week. And, I think there's more things that just take up extra time now than what it used to be. And it's just hard to give that extra time. Some of it they just don't have it.
Well, let me ask you, so we're going to talk about criteria in a minute, but how does this work, especially for some of the volunteers with whom you work? Everybody has something that's going on outside of whatever it is that they're wanting to do, whether that's
Right.
a full-time job or other volunteer opportunities or being a mom or dad at home. So how are you seeing that your volunteers actually make this work?
Well, I'm fortunate. I do have a handful of guys that are retired now from their full-time jobs, so they are around during the day, and that does help a lot. And that is another big issue with the volunteer side of things is, a lot of people do still have day jobs, and that's the big issue is that daytime help. Who's going to respond to that call at 1 o'clock in the afternoon while everybody's at work? So I'm very fortunate to have some of the shifts. I do have people that work overnight shifts, so they are around during the day as well, so that does help.
Okay. So talk about the shift. So what is it like if I'm interested in doing this? What is the expectation in terms of the hours that I'm giving to some place like Louisville, right?
Right.
What would you say to me if we were having an exchange in terms of that expectation of time?
Well, we require them to make a certain amount of calls and drills every year. We do make that. At this time, we don't require them to be emergency medical technicians. We encourage it. We do require a lot of incident command, hazmat training, and those kind of things just to be on emergency scenes. But for the people that are interested in being emergency medical technicians and doing more of the patient care, we'll work with them to get into EMT classes, but a lot of times that can be anywhere from a 4 to a 6 month class with countless hours and lots of tests, lots of studying, clinic times, ride-along times. So we always try and at least sit down with people and let them know what they're really getting into and how long of, again, that dedication word really, what it really means.
Yeah. Okay, let's go ahead and put up the criteria for our viewers. And as we're doing that, tell us what you think is most important, really what stands out, what we should really know.
These are all good. These are pretty average across most departments, I would say. I think one of the biggest things is completing that training. I mean, right now, there's just so many things out there. This line of work and this field is changing so much. It changes every day. Mm-hmm. And if you're not keeping up on it, bettering yourself and keep working at those skills, how long is it before you're not any good at it anymore? Yeah, I know that's bad to say, but it really is important to stay up on all the training and the requirements. Well,
right. I mean, especially when you consider what people are doing. They're answering those very important calls. Now, you've alluded to it, but talk specifically about what type of training is involved. You mentioned earlier you have some volunteers who are retired, and there might be some viewers going, wait, would they be too old for that, right? So tell us how you set the stage with the training.
Yeah, no, we do have some physical agility requirements, and right now, everybody we're fine with that. Everybody's doing fine with that, but yeah, and they do keep up on training. Like I said, we have 2 training nights a month, just in our station. Then there's all kinds of outside training, even through our office with the fire marshal's office, through the training division. They have their own website, and it lists all the classes they're teaching throughout the state. And it is incredible, the classes and the amount that they do for the people they have. So there's so much opportunity out there to get a lot of great training.
What seems to be, I think in any field, there's kind of a hang up, that spot where people get to it and go, this is not for me. Do you have that in the volunteer firefighter arena?
We have seen it in our station a few times. When people first join, we make them do a 6-month probationary period. And that's when we try and get them just some basic training and get a feel for what they're doing. And that a lot of times within that 6 months, they kind of know, I think I can do this, or no, it wasn't for me. And we've told them that there is no shame in saying, this wasn't for me. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to do this, and that's okay.
Okay. We're going to go through a series of photos now, and I want you to take your time as we walk through these. This was actually part of a training, and so we'll take a look at that first one, Jason, and just tell us what we're seeing there.
That was some property there in Louisville. Actually, our public school bought a couple old buildings for future expansion. So they had asked us to burn those. They figured it would be a great opportunity for us to get hands-on training with people. And so, we worked with the school, and we had a couple neighboring departments come in and help us with some extra manpower, and we made a training day of it.
Jason, can I ask the folks up in the booth to go back to that photo? Because I want to ask a question there. When you say we go ahead and start that, it's not that simple. I mean, when we take a look at this blaze here, what is it that you have to do to prepare for these people to train to get that to do what it's doing right now?
Well, there's a lot of paperwork that needs to be done for permits and permission. Nowadays you have to have asbestos checks and have inspectors come in and look at things to verify there aren't a bunch of hazardous materials in it, and there are permits that have to go through our office at the fire marshal's office before you can burn structures for training. So it took probably about a month of training just for the actual burn portion. We were very fortunate. The school gave us the buildings for about a year, and we were able to go up and do air pack training and hose advancement trainings and ventilation and roof operations and things like that. And sometimes we don't get that time frame, but this time we were lucky for that.
Well, as I see the smoke too, I mean, I would imagine in a town like Louisville, people are pretty aware of what's happening. I don't assume they are, but when they see something like that, oh my gosh, then what happens?
We definitely had a few come up there a little concerned, but we tried to put it out on our social media and make it known through town for a while that we were going to be burning that day. We were going to have certain roads closed. We even let people know, hey, we're going to be using the fire hydrants. You know, you may notice a change in pressure. You may even notice some discoloration in your water. It's perfectly normal. You know, so we tried to work with the town. The city helped us out a lot with making sure we had roads closed and they had the water system ready to go for that day. So it wasn't just me, it was a joint effort.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. Okay, we can go on to that next one now. What about this?
Yeah, that's the same building as that was in the first shot. That was just after the roof as everything is burned down, and that was kind of, we were just taking a break there for a while things finish smoldering and collapsing in, because we don't want to leave when there's too much stuff still actively burning, just in case.
So Jason, when we look at this photo, and this is kind of the all is almost said and done, with the volunteers, is there, I mean, who's on site that actually has the experience to be able to give the direction for these volunteers to go and successfully put that out?
Yeah, that actually kind of falls back on the duty of myself and the other chief officers.
Okay. All right. We can go to the next. What about this?
Yeah, it's the same building. Yeah, just different picture. That was shortly after we had lit it and it had come through the middle of the roof.
Okay. All right. And this one?
Yeah, this was the small house that was next to that building. In fact, years ago in Louisville, it used to be an old A&W restaurant. And the people that used to own it and run it lived in this small house that was next to it. So it was kind of a sad day for all of us that remember going up there and having, you know, frosty mug root beers and the A&W hamburgers. But yeah, that was when we were practicing. That was for our actual interior hands-on firefighting stages there.
Okay.
And that's the same shot as before, just moving out. And that was when, as you can see in one of the windows there, that room has got quite a bit of fire in there, and that's when they practice their different, what we call them as knockdown techniques with the nozzle, and actually what they call knocking that fire down.
Okay. This is cool.
Yeah, that's a picture off the restaurant burning, and that is taken from the pump panel of our main engine with the deck gun running and the firefighters there in the background. At that point, we were just keeping embers cool and keeping it from spreading to anything else, and it was in free burn stage at that time.
As I'm looking at this photo, one of the questions that's coming to my mind, and we're going to go into this in a minute, but just the preparation and the equipment, I mean, that's involved with this. Are the volunteers responsible for making sure that that equipment is up and running? And this isn't just the action shots that we're seeing. This is all the stuff behind the scenes that's also a part of what they're doing as a volunteer, right?
Correct, yeah.
So this works in large part because they're working.
Right, yeah. Absolutely, yeah. It wouldn't have worked without all those folks there.
Okay, all right. And this one?
Yeah, that was another picture of the small house. That was, at that time, we were starting to move to free burn, and through those windows there where that fire is, that was actually the garage. So we lit the fire in the garage and let it burn slowly to the other side so we could hopefully control it a little bit. And yeah, we have some guys there on the back of the house just trying to keep embers cool. And
I look at these photos, Jason, and I think, especially from a volunteer standpoint, such a phenomenal community service, but such an outside the box for so many people. I mean, we're taught to run from this stuff, right? And now you're training people who are taught to run to go to. Yep. That's, I mean, you're not talking just physical stuff here, you're talking mindset and so many other elements, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Correct.
All right. Then we have the last one here.
Yeah, that was earlier in the morning while we were doing our interior practice. Like I said earlier, when they would go in, you let the fire build in a room and then you practice your knockdown techniques. We were getting people they've got their air packs on there so they can breathe inside. And we have accountability tags, and we have boards. We always keep track of who's on the fire scene, who's in rehab, who is inside the house, who is on the safety lines. And we always check and recheck people to make sure, gloves are on, all of our protective gear is on correctly before anybody went in. So we do the best we can to eliminate any kind of an injury.
Do me a favor and tell us a little bit more about that protective gear. I mean, a lot of us are watching television programs where you have firefighters and so forth. That's pretty heavy stuff, right? Pretty warm.
It is. It's not as heavy as it used to be.
Okay.
Even since when I started in the 90s, it's gotten a little lighter. It's still not light by any means. They're saying with your turnout gear on, by the time you add some of the extra stuff, some of the tools, you're in the average of adding about 75 pounds extra weight onto you with all that gear. And like I said, the technology with it has gotten it so it's lighter than what it used to be even. So.
Wow. Okay. Now, when we think volunteer firefighter, those images that we saw are likely the ones that are at the forefront. But they're not just fighting fires. What are some of the other calls that your volunteers respond to?
Well, we actually, the majority of our calls are actually EMS calls. Anywhere from chest pains, difficulty breathing, not feeling well, trips and falls, bicycle accidents, vehicle accidents. So, our department averages around 250 to 270 calls a year, and usually around 180 of them are EMS calls for the squad.
Okay. And you said 250 calls a year. So because this program is about trying to get people at least interested in this, talk to us about, is that enough? If it's not enough, kind of break it down for us. If you have 250 calls, how many volunteers would be ideal given the shifts and the expectations, and how many do you have?
And it kind of depends on the type of call. An EMS call for somebody with chest pains, 4 to 5 people on the squad is usually a pretty good. They should be able to handle that call. If it's a structural fire, obviously 15 to 20 is great, and sometimes even more. So it just kind of depends on the type of call, the manpower we need. I've been very fortunate lately that most of the time we are averaging a good number of volunteers on calls. As with everybody, we still have those times where it's a little short, but the good thing with that is we have mutual aid agreements with other departments. We can always call them for assistance as well.
Okay. And the other point I wanted to bring up is not everybody who volunteers is expected to go out and hold a hose and shoot water fires. So
correct.
Talk about some of the other volunteer opportunities within.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, not everybody is comfortable putting on the air pack and going into a burning building, but we work with people what their strengths are. There's plenty of things to do on a fire scene. That's what we tell people. If we're in the rural area, we don't have fire hydrants. We run what they call tankers and haul water to the fire scene. So we have some people that they don't want to be in the burning building, but they are more than willing to be a tanker driver and haul water. And a lot of the other fire chiefs in a rural district can tell you a good tanker driver is a great asset. So there's a job for everybody.
Okay, awesome. Benefits of being a volunteer firefighter. What would you say those are?
Well, it's definitely not the pay. But I think, like I said before, it's that dedication, and then it's that pride of what you're doing for your community. I mean, and like I said, it's the people that that you're helping. And I've always felt that way is, when they're calling us, like I said before, they're having probably one of the worst days of their life, and they just want someone to make it better. And if we can do that, and sometimes the outcome isn't what we always want, but we tried.
Okay, October Fire Prevention Month.
Yep.
So as we wind down on this interview, let our viewers know maybe the first thing or one thing that they can do in the spirit of this month to help keep their families and their homes safe.
I think we're getting to that time of year again where a lot of places see an uptick in either chimney fires or fires related to space heaters, either too close to combustibles or they're being ran by extension cords and they short things out. They're not made to handle that draw. So I really think that would, if you have a good wood burning fireplace, make sure it's good and clean. Check it for any damage. Always, if you're using space heaters, check them. Make sure they're not right next to a pile of dirty clothes or right next to a quilt or a blanket that's going to easily combust.
Okay. What about those all-important fire detectors?
Yes. Yep. It's a good time. They always say, check your smoke detectors twice a year. When we turn the clocks back and turn the clocks ahead is a good time to check your batteries.
Okay.
And change them. I mean, we recommend you test them and check them monthly.
How many, let's set the record straight here, how many should we have in our home, right? And people would think maybe the kitchen is obvious, but where else should we have these?
What we really recommend is in each sleeping room, outside of the sleeping room, and then on all levels of the home. So like if you have a 3-bedroom house, one in each bedroom, one in the hallway outside the bedroom, and then at least one in the basement, maybe another one out in the living room, so there's one on each level of the house.
And a detached garage, what advice there?
I would say that's not a bad idea to have one. I think you need to be careful because depends on what you do in that garage. Anything with sawdust, extra dusty, dirty environments is going to cause them to not function properly.
Okay. We have about a minute remaining. Final thoughts for our viewers on our topic today, volunteer firefighters.
I think if this is a good time, if you've ever had that, maybe that small little itch, should I try it? Or if there's an interest, give it a try. I mean, even if you only go on 1 or 2 calls a year, you are still benefiting your community on those few times you were there.
Okay, all right. Folks wanting more information on volunteer firefighters, we're going to put a graphic up here so they can get what they need. The Nebraska State Fire Marshal Agency, which we talked about at the top of the program, sfm.nebraska.gov, 402-471-2027. There's also the Louisville Fire and Rescue. Our guest is associated, obviously. He's the chief there. That's louisvillenebraska.com, 402-949-9396. And then finally, volunteerfirefighter.org. Jason, I want to thank you so much for being here today, sharing your time, expertise, stories. I want to wish you and your volunteer team the very best moving forward, and those of you at the State Fire Marshal too.
Thank you much.
Thanks for everything that you're doing to help keep us all safe.
Yep. Thank you. We appreciate it.
You bet. Thanks to our students who are working so hard behind the scenes, and of course, to all of you for watching. We will see you next week.
Consider This is an issues and information program produced by UNO Television in the School of Communication. More information and program archives can be found at nebraskapublicmedia.org/considerthis. If you'd like to share your comments about this program, call the UNO School of Communication at 402-554-2600 during regular business hours. Or send an email to cwyatt@unomaha.edu.